What's going on, 5-9 Gaming? My name is Hydros, and welcome back to some more My Hero Academia Ultra Impact. And today we're going to be going over some of the best UR characters, as well as some of the best UR character pairings that you're going to want to go for when doing your tutorial reroll banner summons. Now, before we're going to get started, make sure you guys go down there, click that red subscribe button if you haven't already, click that bell, turn on all notifications, and miss out on any future videos, as well as drop a like down below on today's video if you guys are hyped for the global release of My Hero Academia Ultra Impact. Now here today, I'm using my database website for the game. If you want to check it out, link in the description down below. But we're going to be using this to kind of show off what the units do, just reading off, and also showing which units that you're going to want to be going for. Now, the tutorial reroll banner is pretty much, if not identical, to the JP tutorial reroll banner, meaning it's exactly the same. There are not that many characters in the specific tutorial reroll banner pool. So you're going to be dealing with a limited pool of units, and it's not very much. It's like about, I would say 10 characters-ish, roughly. So obviously the ones I have on screen, there's way more characters here than there are in the tutorial reroll banner, but in the game, there's going to be like 10 characters. There's also memories, so you can get memories as well. But here today, we're going to be dealing just with the characters, because memories, you can kind of focus on those after you get kind of the characters that you want to start out with in your game. So we're going to be dealing with that. Also, again, it is identical to the JP versions. JP's has not changed since the release of the JP version. It's exactly the same as it was. So, you know, they haven't been added. So globals is pretty much going to be the exact same way. So we're going to do that. So here today, we're going to go over the first pairing that you want to go for, and one of the better characters to get in the game, and that is going to be the blue Katsuki Bakugo. He is one of the first initial characters, and he is by far one of the best characters in the tutorial summon pool, because he is pretty insane, if I do say so myself. So he has his plus ultra, which is howitzer impact, deals 700% damage to a single enemy, and then if the enemy is burned, his power is increased by 50%, power meaning attack. So keep that in mind though, keep that in mind for that burn increase. His first action skill, which is one of his normal abilities, is inflict 350% damage to a single enemy with a medium chance to inflict burn for 3 turns. So he has that medium chance to burn, which then can increase his plus ultra attack. So you can get that burn chance off with his AP shot, and then boom, you get that extra power boost with that 700% plus another 50%. That's going to be pretty much insane. And then also he has when this skill is used in a chain and succeeds. So when you use a chain, right? A chain is basically using 3 or 2, 1, 2 or 3 or 4, no, 1, 2 or 3 action skills in a row, right? So you have 3 characters on the field. You can use 1 action skill per character when it's your turn. So if you use a chain, you're going to do 1, 2, 3 for each, 1 for each character. And when that chain is 1 or more, or if you do a successful chain, it's going to decrease the enemy defense by 15%. So that's pretty good. I mean, you're going to be decreasing that defense, and then also getting that burn percent chance as well, which burn does inflict damage over time as well. So his second action skill, which is going to be stun grenade, and stun grenade, you get this ability by unlocking node 4 on page 1 of the ability board of the ability board. Yeah. So, and then also your cooldown of 4 turns with your first action skill, 4-turn cooldown on stun grenade. And that's going to deal 225% damage to all enemies. So he's an AoE on top of that. And then he also has a chance to inflict blindness for 2 turns, which is blindness is pretty much to where they can miss, like an accuracy decrease. So they do have that chance to miss their attacks, which is also a really good thing to have with Bakugo. So there's that. Then he has his auto skills, which are pretty much like passives in the game. And his first auto skill is when HP is 50% or above, increase own power by 35%, and then increase power by 5% per enemy defeated. So he is not only a good user for when enemies are burned, but he also stacks attack when he has multiple waves of enemies. So if you have a stage to where you have 3 waves of enemies and there are 3 enemies per wave, if you defeat all 3 enemies per wave on each wave, that's a lot of power increase. And as well as if you keep that HP above 50%, you're getting that 35 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, blah, 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 for each enemy defeated. So there's that. On top of that, if the enemy is also burned, you're getting that extra 50% on top of the 700%. Man, again, he is, one of the best units in the game by far on release. So when HP is 50% or above again, you're also going to get a speed increase by 25%. And then also another power increase by 3% every turn up to 30%. So that does cap out at 30%. But you're going to get that 30%. And also this unlocks on page 1, node 1 of the limit break ability board. So that you're going to get that up to 30% power plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, blah, 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 per enemy defeated, plus another 35% for the HP above 50, plus another 50% if the enemy is burned, and then a 700% damage. Oh, again, Bakugo is insane to use when he first came out, man. He still is one of the better characters of the game. And just to give you a little insight, Blue, the blue typing, is one of the best teams, in my opinion, still. Even on JP, Blue is one of the better teams still to run because Blue just has a multitude of units to use. And they just released on JP more Blue units with the Hawks and stuff like that just came out. So that they're just adding to the pool of units on this game. So if you're going to go for Bakugo, there is a unit that does do well with him, and that is going to be the UR Momo. So in my opinion, if you are re-rolling and you want just one of the better accounts to go for, re-roll for the Bakugo plus Momo. Those two pairings, these two characters paired together, gonna be one of the better units to go for. And then also if you summon one of like the actual banners in the game, you have a chance to then get Blue Air Force Deku, which Air Force Deku is gonna be a unit that you can get after you do the tutorial banner and stuff like that. You can't get him in the tutorial banner, but you can get him after. If you happen to get Air Force Deku, Momo plus Bakugo plus Air Force, oh, that's an insane team if I have to say so myself. But Momo, she is going to inflict 650% damage to a single enemy, and she's also going to fill your team's plus ultra gauge by 20% on her plus ultra. So if you use her plus ultra first, you're going to get that plus ultra gauge increase to Bakugo, giving him the quicker ability to use his plus ultra. Although I've found that that's not necessarily the case. If you do successful chains with their action skills, you can actually increase your plus ultra gauge by a certain percentage depending on your chain count. So I've really noticed that Bakugo, especially when running with Momo, I tend to get his plus ultra off first along with her, so before she gets hers. So that's something to note. Momo is also a healer, so she is a support unit for your team. She removes one status condition from allies and heals 35% for your team. So she's going to be healing your team. She's going to be removing that status condition. And she's also a support character because of that plus ultra gauge increase so far. So again, she's going to be a good healer, a good support. She can do well with Bakugo so far. And then her second ability is going to be inflict 225% damage to all enemies. So she is a damage dealer. Then she also decreases all enemy speed by 15% for 3 turns. Remember what I said about Air Force Deku? Air Force Deku, if we actually go look at Air Force Deku really quickly, this is him right here. Air Force Deku is that if, let's see here. His second ability, Detroit Smash, inflict 350% damage to a single enemy, deal an additional 50% damage if the enemy has a speed debuff. So again, when you're using Momo, that speed debuff is going to also come in handy not only for Bakugo when he gets his speed increase, you're also decreasing the enemy speed, so you're having the higher ability to go faster. But her, after you get to the main summons in the game, you can then summon for this guy right here, and he will benefit from the same team with Bakugo and Momo as well. So that's going to be really good for him. Okay, and then also Momo, as I mentioned, Blue is one of the best teams in the game because her passive, her first one, increase all skill type, which is the blue typing, by power by 25%. So she's given all blue types an attack of 25% buff. So that's good. She's a good support. She's a healer, and she helps out pretty much a lot of the best units in the game. And then also her second passive is at the start of the battle, all allies are immune to 1 debuff. So all your allies are going to be immune at the start of the battle. Then when HP is 50% or less, increase plus ultra gauge by 40% once only. This is only for Momo right here, but this is going to be good. So you can't get any status ailments on your team once you start the battle, but that is only once only. So that's going to be useful against like 1 wave bosses and stuff like that, right? So that's good. So that's the blue team. Bakugo and Momo, these 2 units right here. These are going to be the units that you're absolutely going to want to reroll for if you're worried about wanting some of the better units in the game at the start. So Bakugo, Momo, and then also keep in mind Air Force Deku. If you're going to be summoning on the banners and you happen to get this guy too, he's going to go well with these 2 here. So that's going to be a good triple team right there, not including subunits as well. You do have subunits, but we're not doing that. We're just going to do the main 3 here today. But again, that's going to be a good guy for that team there. So one of the next best teams is going to be a villain team. Now, villains can somewhat be sort of scarce in the game a little bit. There's not too many villains, but they actually have been adding a lot more villains lately, so that's really good. But the better pairing to get when dealing with villains in the game is going to be Shigaraki and All For One, because they are going to work off each other very well because of All For One's all League of Villains ally buff on his passive. And then Shigaraki is also going to be dealing damage against pro hero. Look, all this additional damage if the enemy is a pro hero, that fear chance as well. The enemy is a pro hero, decrease enemy power by 30%, League of Villain allies increase by 30% and stuff like that. So All For One isn't necessarily buffing anything with him. He's not really a League of Villain unit, but he is good to have on the team if you have someone like Shigaraki and let's say the SR Dabi, because the SR Dabi is also going to get this buff by All For One because of the League of Villains. So that's a good thing to have. And then All For One also reduces cooldown of allies by 1. He's also going to be reduce cooldown on action skills on himself. So he has a cooldown, so he can reduce these right here. And then also his other ability, enemies action skills deal 25% less damage. But again, All For One's not necessarily a unit that pairs directly with like other units, or a unit that works with Shigaraki to where Shigaraki is also buffing All For One. All For One is literally there to support the League of Villains, and he also is quite good, but he is mainly there to support League of Villains with Shigaraki. And again, Shigaraki plus another League of Villains unit like Dabi or Toga. Toga is actually really good too. She inflicts bleed, which is really good ability in the game as well for her. So you can pair that Shigaraki and someone else, then have All For One chilling on that 3rd slot, just chilling there, right? So that's going to be really good for him. So that's going to be your second best pairing in the game using for villains, because they are pretty good. And this Shigaraki, man, he can be nutty in some instances. Like, again, most of the enemies in the game, if I would say, are pro heroes in some of the areas, especially like the USJ event where it's all pro heroes that you're fighting usually, or majority of them pro heroes. And then also you got stages where you're fighting other pro heroes in like story events and stuff, like you're fighting Aizawa in some story events, you're fighting All Might and stuff like that. So you're not going to have a scarce enemy resource of pro heroes. So definitely going to be really good to go against those pro heroes. And also that's going to be really good for Ultra Arena, because Ultra Arena is kind of like the PvP-ish. It's not live PvP, it's like you versus bots. But if everyone is running like pro hero teams or have multiple pro hero teams, they're going to come in handy in Ultra Arena dealing with those pro hero teams specifically. So that's going to be good for that. So that's Shigaraki and All For One. Again, another good pairing to have in the game. And then one of the final pairings to look out for is going to be the green UR Hawks and the green Ochako Uraraka. Now, Ochako Uraraka is basically a support character as well, kind of similar to Momo a little bit, but her and Hawks kind of work well with each other because of evasion, which evasion is going to allow you to dodge attacks for about a certain amount of turns, right? 1 turn usually is the case, but it is what it is. So Ochako, let's go over her first since she is the support. She's going to inflict 650% damage to a single enemy, and then all allies critical rate increase by 20%. So you're going to get that crit rate increase. You're going to be dealing that extra damage if you get those crits. And then also, when I said she's a support, literally the name of it is I can do it with support. Heals all allies by 30% and then applies evasion to all allies. So she's going to heal you, and then she's going to give you evasion to dodge an attack for the following turn. So that's going to be really useful, especially if you're doing like hard bosses, again, like the USJ, the VE tower. That's going to become in handy. But also it has a cooldown of 7 turns, so that's going to be waiting a while to use that again. But again, it does come in handy. And where she applies evasion, you can also use that with Hawks, because if Hawks, I believe if he has evasion, yeah, so his Hawk's second ability, when increase own power by 35% when evasion is active. So you can literally give Hawks this passive once you actually activate Ochako's heal and evasion thing when you give it to the allies. So once you activate that, Hawks is immediately going to get that 35% increase once he gets that evasion from her, which is going to be really good for him. And then also, she is going to have a counter. She's one of the first counter units in the game. So her second ability is counter normal attacks for 3 turns. So every time she gets attacked with the normal attack from an enemy, she's going to basically just counter it immediately. And then also it's going to increase her own power by 35% for 3 turns. So that's going to be really good. And again, she's like Momo specifically because she increases all knowledge or green type allies by 25%. So that's going to be really good, again, with Hawks and some other green units. Is there another green unit that I'm not thinking of that comes out on release? I don't think so. Oh yeah, Green Todoroki. Green Todoroki does come out on release as well. So this guy here, you can use him with Ochako as well as Hawks. But I feel like, I don't feel like Hawks really... No, Hawks can work well on this team. He doesn't really have pro hero buffs. He doesn't really necessarily work with pro heroes because he doesn't buff pro heroes specifically. So he can give allies a second chance to attack for 2 turns. So if you have him and then you also have this Todoroki, he has this all enemies. So Todoroki can have the chance to then do a second AoE with Hawks' ability there. That's going to be really decent as well. I think this is actually normal attacks. This isn't like ability attacks. Sorry. No, this is not for this. This is for normal attacks, not action heals. So that's that. But yeah, Hawks plus Ochako. Again, Ochako is the green supporter of the game. So she's going to be really good if you want to build a green type team. And then again, also this Todoroki. If you're going to want to summon Ochako, I would more so recommend going for the Todoroki with Ochako instead of Hawks. But if you want to deal with that evasion type team, Hawks plus Ochako is the better route to go for. So that's just my opinion. Again, I firmly believe Hawks plus Ochako might do you better in the long run, but there's nothing wrong with using Todoroki plus Ochako as well. So you can go for these two specifically together or these two. Either one really works because they both work together fairly well. So that's just my opinion, and that's how it's going to be. But those are going to be some of the best units to reroll for in the game if you guys are going to be playing My Hero Academia Ultra Impact Global version. Again, we're going to go over it really quickly. Blue UR Bakugo and blue Momo, the best units to go for when you're rerolling. I would ideally go for those first if you want to get one of the best teams in the game. If you don't really care for that, if you want to go for a villain team, Chomura Shigaraki plus All For One, the best 2 villains to go for, especially because they're also 2 purple types. So I would recommend going for those 2. And then also, if you're gonna be going for green, I would say first of all, go for Todoroki and Ochako first. If you really want to go with Hawks, then go with Hawks Ochako for the evasion team. That's how it's gonna go, and that's my opinion so far. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.